Last May, in a series called Week of Wishes, we asked our viewers to make a wish, big or small, and then we made those dreams come true for 5 lucky people. For those who were chosen, the magic has yet to wear off. If you could have just one wish, what would it be?
Dear Early Show.
Carol Robbins used to be homeless. Her only wish was to thank the man who helped her off the streets.
My boss hired me out of homelessness. I wish for him to have a new set of golf clothes and clubs as repayment.
It's a pleasure to present to you some golf clubs from TaylorMade.
Bill's already put his new clubs to good use, winning his first match in a local tournament.
Crisis Center is advising patients.
Ambulance dispatcher Christy McCluskey helps save lives, but her family feared for her life because she drove an old, worn-out car 100 miles a day to her job. We have a surprise for you.
And for all you do for everyone else, the 2,800 Buick dealers and all the great folks at General Motors want to give you this Buick Rendezvous.
GM let her pick her favorite color and interior. To Christy, it rides like a dream come true. The Posey family's rundown mobile home made teenage daughter Amanda especially ashamed.
She does not invite any of her friends over because of what they would think.
Sandra Posey asked for a little fix-up and got a much bigger return.
And we would like to present you with the brand new Fleetwood home, the Waverly Crest. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home. And we hope that you enjoy it for years to come.
Oh my gosh, I've never really had any of my friends over, and now I don't have to be embarrassed, you know. I'm gonna have a party.
On Labor Day, the family packed up the last of their possessions from the old trailer and moved into their new home nearby. The baby has plenty of space to play. Amanda now has a new room and friends who visit all the time. Donna Olda's only wish was to fulfill a promise she'd made to her late husband. He wanted his ashes scattered over sacred ground at Wounded Knee, South Dakota. We helped make that happen.
Speechless. The energy, the feeling, the story, everything is just here. I love you, Alan. Rest in peace.
You're on your way to Hawaii. Aloha.
Scott Butler's wish was to see Pearl Harbor, Hawaii before he died. Through the help of a letter written by a family friend, his wish came true. And there's more. Last month, Scott was made an honorary member of the Kentucky State Police and promoted to colonel by the governor himself.
We're proud of you and the courage that you've shown, and we're proud to have you as one of us.
He's been through a lot, and this has been a real uplifting thing for him. Dreams do come true, and Scott is a result of that.
5 letters, 5 impossible dreams, 5 wishes that came true.
Oh, and thank you so much.
Oh, my goodness.
My goodness. Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
All right.
It was overwhelming.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it was a commercial aircraft. We don't know if it was a private aircraft. We have no idea how many were on board or what the extent of the injuries are right now. We have, I understand, an eyewitness on the phone right now. Sir, good morning. This is Bryant Gumbel. Could you give us your name?
Yeah, my name is Stuart.
Stuart, where are you right now?
I'm working at a restaurant in Soho.
All right, so tell us what you saw, if you would.
I was waiting at a table, and I literally saw it seemed to be like a small plane. I just heard a couple noises. It looked like it bounced off the building, and then I just saw a huge ball of fire on top. And then the smoke seemed to simmer down. And it just, a lot of smoke was coming out, and that's pretty much the extent of what I saw.
A private aircraft?
I'm not sure if it was it just seemed like a smaller plane. I don't think it was anything commercial.
Could you tell us whether or not it was a prop or a jet?
I honestly don't know. It happened too quickly.
Characterize the scene for us down there right now, if you would.
Excuse me?
Can you tell us about the scene down there right now?
Right now, people are just on the street looking at the building. The building, there's just a lot of smoke. It's not too crazy down where I am.
How far away from the World Trade Center specifically are you?
I'm actually on Thompson Street North. I'm not too far.
It's 8:54 right now, Stuart. Can you tell me when this happened exactly?
I would have to say about 10 minutes ago.
About 10 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Is this normally an area that is heavily trafficked by aircraft, or is this an area that aircraft steer pretty clear of?
You know, I really don't know that information.
Is there much panic around there?
Just people on the street coming out looking. There was panic at first, but it seemed to slow down right now.
We're looking at a picture of a great deal of smoke coming out of the building. Can you please tell us, I mean, was there, after you heard this crash, was there smoke immediately?
No, there was like a big ball of fire on the top of the building, and then as that simmered down, there just seemed to be a ton of smoke. And so yeah, pretty much immediately.
I hear fire engines in the background. Has that been going since you saw this crash, or is that kind of late arrival?
It happened almost pretty much after we heard the crash.
Almost after you heard the crash.
It was pretty quick when we heard sirens and people acting on it.
Did you were you looking up as the plane approached the building, or did it only catch your attention after it crashed into the World Trade Center?
I heard like a sort of a crashing sound, but I looked up quick enough to actually see something go into the building, but everything happened so fast I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at.
So there's no way you can know whether or not the plane seemed to be in trouble before it crashed into the building?
Oh, no, I couldn't tell.
It's hard for us to tell from the picture we're seeing just how far down from the top that plane crashed. Have you any better eyesight to it from your vantage point?
Not really. All I know is it definitely wasn't the top of the building, because that seems to be intact from what I saw. I really can't tell right now.
Can you tell us anything about how much debris came crashing to the ground, and whether or not anybody was hurt as a result?
I honestly don't know. I just saw a lot of what looked like crumbling glass, maybe just a lot of stuff falling down, but I can't tell you debris-wise.
Obviously, the timing of this is important. It comes before 9 o'clock. Perhaps, and we say that in hopeful fashion, perhaps not everybody was at work, because if that building was in fact crowded with workers, we're looking at probably some casualties and injuries of considerable proportions. But right now there's no way of telling that. Mr. Stewart, just one more time, and I know I'm exhausting what little information you have, but we have people joining us every moment. Take me through again where you were, when this happened, what you saw.
I was serving tables at a restaurant, and I just heard sort of like a boom sound. It almost sounded like an earthquake sound, and I looked up and I saw literally something like, it might have even bounced off a little bit of a building, and next thing I know, I saw a big ball of fire on the top of the building, and just lots of smoke, and what looked like to be debris or glass falling down. And it happened really quick. It was really hard to...
Okay. Stuart, I thank you very much. I appreciate that, sir.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're on the line with another eyewitness. Sir, this is Bryant Gumbel in New York.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. You're Wendell?
Yes, I am.
Wendell, can you give me your last name?
Klein.
Wendell Klein. Tell me where you are, if you would.
Well, right now I'm back in the hotel. I'm in the hotel offices here, the front office.
You're in the... Okay, where were you when
I was standing right in front of the hotel. I'm the doorman there. And...
The hotel. Which hotel?
Marriott World Trade Center.
Right across from the World Trade Center.
It's actually right in between them.
Right in between the World Trade Center.
Yes.
Okay, so you were standing outside, and tell us what you saw and what you heard.
Well what I heard first, an explosion. And I just figured that it was like a plane passing by. Then all of a sudden, stuff just started falling, like bricks and paper and everything. And so I just kind of like ran like inside to get away from the falling debris and glass and so forth. Then... after like everything stopped, because it like was falling in the street and the cars were crashing into each other. Then when it kind of stopped, I heard a guy screaming. And when I looked over, there was this guy that was on fire. So I kind of like ran over, and I tried to like put the fire out on him. And he was like screaming, and I just told him to roll, and he said he can't. And then another guy came over with his bag and kind of like put the flames out on him. So right now, he's being taken care of. I just had everyone call the ambulance and stuff so it can help him out.
He caught fire as a result of the falling debris?
Yeah.
How much debris, can you give us an idea of how much came crashing to the ground?
It's just a lot. Bricks, a lot of bricks, a lot of glass. I'm like enough to like damage cars on the street, make cars swerve into each other, that kind of thing.
Any other people on the ground that you saw?
No, just
hurt?
Just him so far.
Tell me about the traffic down in that area, and I'm talking about human traffic.
Human traffic? Well,
at 8:55, which is about the time when this happened, 8:45, 8:55.
Right. On my side, where I'm standing, there's not a whole lot because it's basically right in front of the hotel, so you don't get too much, but you do get enough. You know, get some.
What about traffic in the building? I mean, you work basically between the two towers.
Yeah.
Most people arriving for work before or after 9 a.m.?
Before. Basically, in my hotel, I have people who are just leaving and going to meetings. Outside my hotel, I just had people waiting for their cars to take them to their various destinations, that kind of thing.
I hear alarms going off down there. What's happening?
That's our hotel alarm, and basically, I guess that went off automatically. They've evacuated everyone in the hotel. They evacuated all employees.
They have evacuated the hotel?
Yes.
Immediately?
Yes.
Can you give me an idea of what the scene is like down there?
What the what is like?
What the scene is like down there at the World Trade Center?
Just people are like crying and panicking, like want to know what's going on. When I came inside, there were a lot of people who wanted to go out to see what was going on, but the security kind of like kept them at bay and kept them inside. Basically, right now, I just still have people going towards the bar area. They're trying to evacuate everyone out of here. That kind of thing.
Is this an area, Mr. Klein, that is normally trafficked by small planes, or is it an area that they're generally steer clear of?
You do get some. I do see some passing. Basically, those planes like I do see passing are like those, like the planes from Washington, D.C. area. Like, so there won't be like huge planes, but you know, big enough.
Are you hearing anything, Wendell, about what kind of a plane it was, or
No.
how many were on board?
No. Basically, all I got was my wife called me. She told me that it was a plane crash, and basically, I really don't know what's going on so far.
Do you know if it was a private aircraft or a commercial plane?
That I don't know.
You don't know?
No, sir.
You're not seeing any evidence of people being carried out of the building yet?
There's a woman that just carried. I guess she fainted or something, but I don't see any physical injuries to her.
All right. Mr. Klein, thank you very much, sir.
All right. Good talking to you, sir.
I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
I understand Teresa Renault is with us right now. Miss Renault, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
This is Bryant Gumbel. I'm down on 59th and 5th. Where are you?
I am in Chelsea, and we are at 8th and 16th. We are the tallest building in the area, and my window faces south, so it looks directly onto the World Trade Center. And I would say, you know, approximately 10 minutes ago, there was a major explosion from probably, it looks like about the 80th floor. It looks like it's affected probably 4 to 8 floors. Major flames are coming out of the, the north side and also the east side of the building, yes. And it was a very loud explosion followed by flames, and it looks like the building is still on fire on the inside.
Which building are we talking about? The one that's westernmost?
Let's see. Yes, sir.
So it's coming out on the north side and the east side of the building of the westernmost tower.
That's correct.
You're over in Chelsea. Did you hear the explosion from your position?
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, we heard it, and because I was just like standing there pretty much looking out the window, I didn't see what caused it or if there was an impact.
So you have no idea right now?
There's another one. Another plane just hit. Right, oh my God, another plane has just hit. It hit another building, flew right into the middle of it. Explosion. My God, it's right in the middle of the building.
This one into the east tower?
Yes, right in the middle of the building. And right now, that was definitely looked like it was on purpose.
You saw a plane?
Yes, I just saw a plane go into the building.
Why do you say that was definitely on purpose?
Because it just flew straight into it. It didn't look like it was, and it didn't look like a commercial jet. It was a smaller plane. It was definitely a smaller plane.
Can you characterize the scene down there right now for us?
Now, on the...
Yeah, as you can look down to the street.
Yes.
From your vantage point?
On the second building, I think that the further one, the east side, there it looks like it's about, I would say 15 floors lower than the first building, and there's now flames coming out of that building as well. They're both completely on fire.
Now, I'm looking at what was the West Tower, and it looks like the fire on the north side of that tower is a little bit lower, but it looks like it's the same building. You're saying it was the other tower that absorbed this second impact?
That's what it looks like, exactly, from my perspective.
Don King, our director, if I could ask you to widen out and give us a shot of both towers, because we can't tell from this vantage point. Oh, okay, that is on the second tower.
Yes.
It is on the east tower. Teresa, hang on with us 1 second. We're gonna re-rack the tape of when we were talking to you to see if we can tell.
Okay.
We can't see anything. We can't see a second plane in the picture. There we see the explosion.
Yes.
There we see the
explosion. It was definitely a plane that
explosion.
hit it.
Here we are. We're trying to re-rack the tape right now. Teresa, do you have a vantage point to the ground from where you are?
Yes, I probably could go down.
No, I'm not asking you to go down. I'm
Okay.
asking if you can see it.
Oh, no, I cannot see the ground, as a matter of fact. There's too many buildings in the way. I can probably see just up about, I would say, up a third of, I can see the top 2/3 of the building.
Uh-huh. And how much of that top 2/3 do you see flames? Do you see damage?
I would say middle of the second building and the top 4th of the first building.
Okay, Teresa, stay with us. We're going to look for that tape one more time.
Okay.
We're going to re-rack the tape here and see if we can't see a plane. Yeah, we see it right now. We see a plane right now coming in and impacting on what would appear to be the north side of that tower, of the westernmost tower, and hitting about 10 to 15 stories below. Teresa, let me ask you to hang on with us for a second while I talk with another gentleman who is an eyewitness, Richard Davis. Mr. Davis, good morning.
Good morning.
This is Bryant Gumbel.
Yes, sir.
I'm at 59th and 5th. Where are you?
I'm at 50th and 5th, but I'm facing south on the 39th floor.
You're facing south, so you have a clear vantage point.
Yes.
Talk to me about what you see, if you could.
The first plane looked like a 737. It flew right up the middle of Manhattan. It was clearly too low. I noticed it by the time it was passing the Empire State Building, and noticed that it was too low. It appeared to be absolutely nothing wrong with the plane, and then it very deliberately flew into the side of the World Trade Center.
Why do you say very deliberately?
Because the pilot aimed right for the building, and there was nothing wrong with the plane.
The plane did not appear to be in any trouble whatsoever?
None whatsoever.
And we're talking about a commercial aircraft, a 737?
It appeared to be a 737. I can't be absolutely certain.
No, obviously, I'm not asking you to be an aviation expert, but clearly what you saw, or what you say you saw, was not a small aircraft.
It was not a small aircraft. It was a small commercial aircraft, like a small Airbus or a 737 Boeing.
And that was the first plane?
Jet.
Did you see? Mr. Davis, we're looking at a tape replay of the second plane boring into the building. Hard for us to tell exactly how large an aircraft it is there, or whether or not that was intentional. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Believe me, it was intentional. We saw the second one come up the Hudson and veer into the second building.
Why do you say the second was intentional?
Because it was flown very deliberately. There appeared to be nothing wrong with the aircraft. It was flown very deliberately into the building.
Have they, you don't, obviously you're at 50th, you don't have any vantage point down there. What's everybody else talking about there who has the same vantage point? They see all the same thing you did?
Yes. Well, others did not see the first one, but there were several people in my office when the second one came in.
Yeah, we're looking at the second one boring in right now, and it does not seem to be wavering in any way or seem to be banking to avoid the tower in any way.
Let us say it could hardly be a coincidence that two airplanes fly into the World Trade Center within minutes of each other.
Yeah.
On a clear day.
Yeah. It's a terrible scene right now.
Yes, the towers look terrible.
Wow. Wow. Miss Renault, are you still on with me? Teresa Renault?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Can you tell us if the scene has changed from your vantage point?
I would say from my vantage point right now, it's looks like there are very few flames coming out of the first tower. Still a lot of smoke. The second tower, we can still see flames coming out of the window, the north window, and a lot of smoke. A lot of smoke. The tops of the building are covered in smoke.
And from your vantage point, you can't see anything of what's happening on the ground.
No, I cannot. I hear a lot of sirens out on the street right now. One thing that you can see in the windows is all of the emergency system lights. That was one thing we could see. All of them were blinking off and on in the first tower when that happened. And I can't see them anymore. The second tower, I cannot see any emergency lights in the building blinking.
All right, I'm going to thank you both right there and pass along the word that we are getting from the FBI, that at this point the FBI is trying to confirm that this was an intentional act. At this point, it's pure speculation. Mr. Davis has told us of what he saw, and that it appeared the first plane, a large aircraft, bored into the westernmost of the two towers in intentional fashion. While we were speaking moments ago, a second plane, hard to identify the size of it, bored its way into the easternmost tower. So we have two crashes. Here's a different angle of the same plane. You see it off there on the left. Boring into there. But again, at this point, it is restricted airspace. It is a clear day. So the suspicions are high that these are intentional acts. But the FBI at this point is still trying to confirm that these are intentional acts. We have another eyewitness on the phone. Sir, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Gumbel.
How are you?
I'm fairly frightened, I have to say.
Give me your name, if you would.
My name is Frederick Schneider, sir.
Mr. Schneider, where are you?
I am on Liberty Street, which is the same street that the Trade Center's on. I'm on the south side, and the Trade Center's on the north side. My office is on the 24th floor, so I have a very clear view of exactly what happened this morning, and I've been here for about 2 hours, so I've been watching it unfold.
2 hours?
Yes, I got to my office at 7 this morning.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. But tell me about the timetable of when things started to go terribly bad this morning.
Well, Mr. Gumbel, at about 8:50 this morning, there was an explosion. I heard it first, and then my building, which is 51 stories tall, shook and rocked. And then I saw a plume of flame shoot out of the Trade Center over the Hudson River, and then I saw the plane that had crashed into the Trade Center fall down, and then it disappeared behind a building that blocks my view. There was a tremendous amount of smoke, and then it started to rain huge pieces of paper, and the paper continued to come down. At that point, all the news media started to learn about it, and I turned on my radio, and while I was still sitting at my desk, I saw a second jet, fairly large plane, fly in over the south end of Manhattan and deliberately fly directly into the Trade Center before my eyes.
Why do you say deliberately fly into the Trade Center?
Because there was no doubt in my mind that both planes were using the Trade Center as a target. They weren't in trouble. They weren't in distress. They weren't falling from the sky. They aimed for it. And they did a very good job. The Trade Center is torn open. There's a hole in the south side of the Trade Center, torn open from the impact of the plane, which fell into the street below.
Would that be the westernmost of the two towers?
The southernmost of the two towers.
Southernmost of the two towers.
Yes, yes. It's a big gaping hole in it. Flames and smoke have been pouring out since it happened about 5 minutes ago. I'm a little shaken because I saw the plane pass before my eyes. It was just about at my eye level. So.
How close to you?
A block and a half.
You say you saw the first plane fall down.
Yeah.
We're re-racking tape here, by the way, and I'm speaking to you, Mr. Schneider, but I'm showing tape right here of the second plane boring into the northernmost of the two towers. You say you saw the first plane fall down. What can you tell me about that plane?
Well, I didn't recognize it as a plane at first. It looked to me like a charred piece of metal, and I had thought that there was an explosion from within the Trade Center, so I thought what I was seeing was a piece of the Trade Center falling, because the sheath of the Trade Center is metal. But since I've learned that the first explosion was caused by a plane crashing into the tower, I've assumed that what I saw was a piece of fuselage that was falling, and the plume of flame I saw shoot out would be consistent with jet fuel exploding.
So you really have no idea of how large a plane the first one was?
No, I didn't even know that was a plane. I learned that from the news media. But I definitely saw the second plane. I heard it sound, and I saw it streaming in from the south. I watched it crash into the Trade Center.
You said you're very afraid, and understandably so. They're not evacuating your building?
No. I'm going to leave on my own, but I haven't heard any decisions made to that effect.
Can you see the ground from your vantage point?
Oh, yes.
Talk to me about the scene on the ground, if you would.
Well, it's completely devoid of vehicles and people. The entire street is totally littered with paper and smoke, and several vehicles are on fire on Liberty Street in the parking lot, where either fuel or pieces of the plane fell onto them after crashing into the Trade Center. But there's a tremendous number of emergency vehicles here and continuing to arrive. I hear sirens from every side.
All right, Mr. Schneider, you've got a great vantage point. I'm going to ask you to hold on with me for a little while, if you would.
Okay, Mr. Gunn.
I know you're anxious to get out of the building. I'm not going to keep you forever, I promise.
Okay.
But let me ask you to sit tight for a second while I go to Washington, where Jim Stewart is standing by. He's got some official reaction. Jim, good morning. What are you hearing?
Morning, Bryant. Well, as by happenstance, I was talking to FBI headquarters at the moment this explosion took place. They saw it occur as we saw it occur, the second explosion, rather, and their reaction was the same as everyone else. Number one, they noticed the clear weather there. Number two, they noticed what appeared to be, in their eyes, a deliberate attempt to crash the aircraft into the World Trade Center. Right now, they are trying to determine whether, in fact, it was deliberate. They have no information they can share at the moment, and I get the sense that they're in the same mode that we are, simply their mouth is agape trying to figure out what's going on.
Jim, let me interrupt for just 1 second. I'm looking at a report that the FBI is investigating reports of a plane hijacking. Did you have any news of that?
No, we don't.
No confirmation of that whatsoever?
We have no confirmation.
Is anybody even there discussing that?
No, the only discussion that's been going on here, Brian, is that the World Trade Center has obvious symbolic value. It's been a target before of terrorism, and frankly, it would not surprise the FBI or anyone in national security if it was a target again.
Sometimes the obvious leads you to a conclusion. We're looking at two crashes, 18 minutes apart, into an obvious target, a building that has never been hit with a plane before on a clear day. What do the intelligence people there say about that?
The intelligence community for some time has been warning in a steady drumbeat, Bryant, that Osama bin Laden has not been heard from now, frankly, since the beginning of the year, the USS Cole incident, rather, and they've been wondering when and if he will strike again, and they only believed it was a matter of time. And I believe that today that is going to be their first suspicion, but we have no confirmation of that. I must underline, there's no confirmation that this is a terrorist attack, number one, or number two, that it's Osama bin Laden involvement. But I can tell you right now, that is what they are thinking. That is the working premise, and we'll just have to see as the day unfolds what they discover.
Jim, as we sit here at 9:17, does the FBI have any choice but to sit and watch this on television?
I have never heard such a gasp of astonishment as I heard speaking to the FBI headquarters this morning when they saw what we saw, the explosion at the World Trade Center, the second explosion, and the smoke coming out of it. It reminded me and them of Oklahoma City. There's pure astonishment, I can tell you, at FBI headquarters this morning, and they are trying to find out the facts just as we are. Right now, they don't have any.
And as you noted, Jim, this has been a target before. Back on February 26, 93, a terrorist act at the World Trade Center killed 6 and injured more than 1,000 others. Do you know whether or not the FBI had received any warnings about attacks on domestic soil?
You know, frankly, no, and it's a question that we ask every day. I asked as recently as yesterday of the intelligence community what was the latest on terrorism threats in the United States, whether any intercept had been picked up, whether there was any current fear here that the next target would be within the United States. The answer came back no. They were still anticipating that the next strike against American interest would be overseas somewhere. Those are the most vulnerable targets. Today would clearly be some evidence that that's not the case at all. In clear weather, as you pointed out, what appears to be a deliberate attack into the heart of the financial district in New York City. You can't pick a more explicit message to send to America if you're a terrorist than what happened today. I stress again, though, this is pure speculation, but it is speculation right now by the people who are going to have to solve this crime, if in fact it is one, Brian.
That's a good point, Jim. At this point, it is pure speculation. The only thing we can tell you is we are looking at a very clear day in Manhattan on this Tuesday morning. We are looking at 2 towers of 110 stories in height that are on fire right now, that have absorbed 2 impacts with 18 minutes apart. Certainly, it's a little more than it would be an amazing coincidence, I think we should say.
Brian,
go ahead.
We've just been told that, and this should not be come as a surprise, it's standard procedure by the FBI. Their rapid deployment team from the Washington field office, this is a group of people that they send to major disaster and terrorist incidents, such as the twin embassy bombings in Africa. They have now been dispatched to New York. I have reason to believe, too, that some members of the HRT, that's the hostage rescue team, have been put on alert. We don't have any word yet that they would be sent. And these are standard procedures that would take place anytime a major terrorist incident occurs. But this would be a group of approximately 60 experts, people who are very good at picking up the bits of debris that we've been talking about falling on the streets of New York and turning that into evidence should they discover that this, in fact, was a deliberate act.
Jim, and if you don't know the answer to this, I understand, so I apologize up front for asking you, but do you know whether or not there are any federal offices in the World Trade Center at the upper levels?
I don't know that there are. I do not believe that there are. I believe that the FBI and the ATF, the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms people are all closer to Midtown, but I don't know the precise answer to that.
So, in fact, if the buildings were targeted intentionally, this would be more symbolic than a direct attack on the federal government or its employees. Jim, let me ask you to sit tight for a second. I understand, Mr. Davis, you're back with me on the line?
I am.
And Miss Renault, you're also back on the line?
Sure.
Mr. Davis, bring us up to speed. What are you seeing? Anything changed?
No, but the smoke is getting thicker, and I can see flames from some of the windows on the first tower. My view of the second tower is somewhat obstructed.
Where are you, 50th and 5th?
I'm 50th and 5th.
Yeah. The officials there are anxious to, in any way, evacuate your building? Or is this just a normal work day?
I've been told that Rockefeller Center is putting into effect security measures, but we have not been told to evacuate.
Okay. And Miss Renault, what are you seeing right now?
From the southeast tower, there are still flames coming out of the north side of the building. It may be just my perspective, but it looks like something could be sticking out of that. Also, it looks like on the northwest tower that there's possibly, the fire and everything could have moved up because it seems to be that there's smoke coming out higher floors on the building.
You say there appears to be something out. That would be the second aircraft?
Yes.
The one at the lower level?
Yes.
And what actually do you see?
There's an object that doesn't fit with the line of the building that seems to be protruding, and that's what's on fire.
We're getting a look at the building right now, and I must say the smoke seems to be obscuring our view enough so that we can't identify it. We're re-racking the tape right now. You see encircled there off on the right-hand side of your screen, this is the second plane. Obviously, the first plane has already collided with the top of the southernmost building, and now here comes the second plane. And you see, making no moves to evade the second tower, and then crashing into the second one. Mr. Renault, let me ask you to sit tight. Mr. Davis, you too, for a second. I want to go to Washington, where White House correspondent Bill Plant is standing by. Bill, what are you hearing on your end?
Brian, we're hearing that the president will have a statement to make shortly. He is in Florida this morning. He was supposed to do an educational event with children to push his education bill. We understand that that event has been canceled. There was a senior staff meeting here this morning. Nobody seems quite to know exactly what's going on. The National Security Council said earlier that it had heard nothing unusual. This was after the first airplane impact. We will hear from the president, we think, very shortly to hear what he has to say and see what, if anything, they know about this, which appears to be so deliberate.
Bill, I asked Jim this earlier, and again, I apologize if you're not in a position to shed any more light on it, but do you know whether or not officials there at the White House had been forewarned that there was an imminent attack or there was a heightened sense of alert? We're aware there had been for some time a heightened sense of alert throughout the Mideast, but I'm talking about domestically.
Well, we do know that there has been a heightened sense of alert. We do know that there have been a number of threats. There are always threats received. They have tended to take them recently a bit more seriously. But it does not appear, and I hesitate to make this for certain, but it does not appear that they had any advance warning that anything was going to happen today.
Again, this is all speculative, Bill, but are officials there working on the assumption that two planes crashing in the Twin Towers 18 minutes apart on a clear day, not an accident?
Hard to believe that they would think otherwise, but at the moment they seem just as mystified as we are. And as I said before, we do expect a statement from the president, who is down in Florida, sometime within the next few minutes.
All right, Bill, let me go back to Teresa Renault. Ms. Renault, I'm sorry I'd cut you off earlier, and I may again, by the way, if the president is ready to speak, but give us what you see from your vantage point again, if you would.
From the southeast building.
You're in Chelsea, correct?
Yes, I am. On the 14th floor, we have a 360-degree view. It's completely clear, straight shot. We have on the southeast building, on the north side, looks like the north corner, about the middle of the building. It is still very much in flames and smoke rising from that. I can't see as many flames coming out of the northwest building. Looks like, though, that the north side of the building and the west side of the northwest building have been opened up and still very much covered in smoke in the tops of the buildings.
And that the northwest side would be the building that absorbed the first impact, the higher of the two.
That's correct.
From our vantage point, it appears that the higher hole is a larger hole. Is that what you see?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I don't know if that's just a difference in perspective from where I am, because that is the closer building
Certainly
to me.
It's staggered. You're correct.
Yes.
But we had heard an earlier report, unconfirmed, that the first plane appeared to be a 737. The plane we saw, absent any perspective, seemed to be a smaller plane.
I would say the explosion upon impact was much larger on the first hit than the second.
You heard both?
Yes, I saw the impact on the second building. I saw the explosion come from the building on the first one.
Mm-hmm. You're at Chelsea and 14th.
Yes. It's like a 16th and 8th Avenue.
Yeah, I'm sorry, on the 14th floor. I apologize.
Yeah,
not on 14th. You're a considerable ways away. Any effort there to evacuate your building?
Not at this point. No.
Mr. Davis, tell us the mood where you are. We were talking to a gentleman earlier who was in a high-rise closer to the World Trade Center, and he was genuinely afraid, and understandably so.
Well, it is shocking. Very shocking to have witnessed. Perhaps we can be somewhat more sympathetic to what Israel is suffering at the moment.
But they have not moved people out of your building?
No.
You said you're at Rockefeller Center, that security actions have been put into place. What do those entail?
I really do not know, but we have not been told to evacuate.
All right. Jim Stewart, back in Washington, you still with us? Oh, Bill, you're still with us, right?
I am, Brian.
What word are you hearing on when the president's going to come forward?
We were just told that the president will have something to say down in Florida any minute. He is in Florida. We believe that his education event, which was scheduled for this morning, has been canceled. But the White House is saying that the president will have something to say. Then he'll leave Florida and come right back to Washington, Brian.
Mm-hmm. Bill, had his people, Condi Rice, Colin Powell, his security people, his foreign affairs people, Ever discuss this kind of a scenario?
I don't know for certain, but I would be very surprised if they had not talked about it. This kind of what-if disaster planning is a staple in Washington, and particularly at senior levels. And I think that these sorts of things are gamed, examined, and talked about, and everyone hopes they will never happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, in this case, it would seem to have gone against hopes. Again, let's bring everyone up to speed. As best we can tell, wow, we just had another view of the second plane going in. As best we can tell, at 8:45 this morning, an aircraft plowed into the uppermost levels of one of the Twin Towers. An eyewitness has defined that plane, has told us that plane was a 737, but that is unconfirmed. And then moments later, 18 minutes later, a second aircraft, the one you saw just there, plowed into the other Twin Tower at a lower level. That plane, we have no idea of its size. We have no idea if these were intentional acts. We have no idea if these are private planes or commercial aircraft. We have an unconfirmed report from the Associated Press that the FBI was investigating reports of a plane hijacking shortly before the crash into the World Trade Center. Let's go to Florida. President Bush has a statement.
Down in Florida.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I unfortunately will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary of Rod Page and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
We've been watching President Bush, who was down in Florida for what was supposed to be an educational event. Instead, he is racing back to Washington as we speak. The president making a very brief statement in Sarasota, calling it an apparent terrorist attack on our nation. Again, that is unconfirmed, and promising the full resources of the federal government to not only help the victims, but also to investigate. And before asking people to pray with him, the president's saying that this act will not stand. As he was speaking, we got a report from Reuters that a plane was hijacked from Boston. A plane out of Boston was hijacked. But again, that is unconfirmed. We had a report earlier from the Associated Press that there had been a hijacking. Now Reuters is reporting that a plane out of Boston was hijacked. An American Airlines aircraft, we understand, was the plane that was hijacked. This would be in keeping with an earlier eyewitness report that the first plane that plowed into the World Trade Center was a 737. Former FBI agent James Kallstrom covered the World Trade Center bombing back in 1993. He is with us on the line right now. Jim, good morning.
Good morning.
You've been watching this. Talk to me.
I shouldn't say good morning. It's not a good morning.
No, I apologize. Go ahead.
I don't really know much about it, but it sure looks to me like a deliberate act of terrorism, and I mourn the loss of the lives that I'm sure are going to follow this.
I've got a lot of questions for you, James. Let me kind of take it through them if I could. Because you investigated and worked on the original terrorist incident, or I should say the terrorist incident back in 1993, can you tell me if these buildings have any special significance by virtue of who's working in them?
Well, I don't think it's so much who's working them. I think the towers symbolize largely. There's many other symbols also, but the World Trade Center is a symbol. That was one of the original reasons that Ramzi Youssef and the rest of that gang wanted to do the World Trade Center as a symbol of America. So, sure, there's other symbols, but I think this is probably the tallest one on the East Coast.
Again, all of this is unconfirmed. We heard the president call it an apparent terrorist attack. At this moment, have you any doubt that's exactly what it is?
No, I have no doubt of that. I would call it an apparent attack. I think there's probably an infinitesimal chance it isn't, but it certainly doesn't appear that it could be. Commercial airline is number one, are not going to direct themselves into a square hit on the World Trade Center. If there's some sort of a mayday or something wrong with the plane, they're going to try to ditch it elsewhere. They're not going to do that. And if the reports of a second plane hitting the building are true, then I think that probably caps off exactly what this is. It's a cowardly act of terrorism.
How restricted is the airspace around the World Trade Center?
I'm not an FAA person, but you cannot fly through that airspace unless you're a helicopter, unless you're anything really, without being guided by air traffic control. It's highly restrictive.
So the possibility that two planes on a clear day just happened to wander into these buildings.
I think that's beyond the pale.
Yeah, that's not a possibility. Again, you worked on evacuating these buildings. You saw what happened when they were evacuated. How many people are we talking about from what you can see on those upper levels?
Do we know exactly what time this first event happened?
We're guessing. We're putting it at about 8:45, Mr. Kallstrom.
Yeah,
again, that's only by eyewitnesses.
Yeah, Brian, I think we're talking literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people affected by this. I mean, the smoke alone in the other floors and the when you compare the bombing in the basement of that building, which for a number of hours we weren't sure it was a bomb. We thought maybe it was some sort of a transformer blowing up, to what's reported at least as a 737 type size airplane, something that size, hitting the first tower, and then some smaller plane hitting the second. I mean, this is geometrically more catastrophic.
Difficult building to extraordinary, obviously, because of the height of the buildings. But the plans in place for evacuation, are they, from your experience, state of the art?
I think they are. I think the whole security of that building, both from a physical security standpoint and from an evacuation standpoint, was certainly reinvented and looked after that tragedy that happened back in the early 90s. And they're probably as good as they can be. But having said that, you're talking about one of the tallest structures, or two of the tallest structures in the United States. And whether or not the elevators are working, they're probably not. They're not used in case of fire. You've got a massive evacuation problem on your hands.
Would it be highly unusual, Mr. Kallstrom, for these attacks, if that's what they were, to have taken place without some degree of advance warning?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, the FBI and law enforcement, the people that come to work every day and suffer through immense criticism when little things go wrong, these are the days that everyone hopes that they have a very formidable, highly motivated FBI and law enforcement team. And I suspect we do. And these are the things that they try to not have happen. These are the things they try to have the intelligence to avoid happening. International terrorism, if that is what this is, and I don't know what it is very hard to penetrate because it's not very, it doesn't have a hierarchy of authority, and it's cellular, and it's a lot of different people motivated for religious type reasons, hatred reasons, and you can necessarily not know a lot about what's going on in an agency if you're in at some level, because it's so segmented.
Again, I'm getting a report now that it was a United Airlines plane that plowed into the building. We don't know whether that negates the American Airlines reported hijacking or whether or not that was a second plane. So at this point, we're getting different reports. Go ahead, Mr. Kelso.
Yeah, I mean, you telling me that, Brian, if that is a commercial airline, a United or American or whatever it is, you know, that, I mean, my initial thought there is that this plane was somehow commandeered by somebody, hijacked, taken over, and flown into the building. I don't know that for a fact, but that's certainly what it looks like.
Yeah, as I'm looking at the second tape right here, and I don't know if you're watching on the line with us, that is definitely a commercial-sized aircraft.
Yeah.
Now that we've blown it up.
Yeah.
In size.
You know, it's beyond belief, but it's not beyond belief. I mean, we've seen this hatred find its way into the embassy bombings in Africa. We've seen this hatred at the USS Cole. We've seen it at the World Trade Center in '93. We've seen it around the world in acts that take place almost every day. And, you know, for this to then transform itself into this size of an incredible tragedy, to me, although I certainly would never expect it, never ever want it to happen, is not that unbelievable.
Yeah, James Kallstrom, let me ask you to sit tight for a second, if you would. Brian Jenkins, a terrorism expert who's been with us quite a few times, as I understand, on the line. Brian, you there?
Yes, I am.
Talk to me.
Well, obviously, you know, we don't know the details of what happened yet. We should have details coming out fairly quickly, though, as to the identity of this aircraft. We're talking about crowded airspace in New York with major airports in the area, both in the immediate area of New York and in the surrounding cities. There should be information fairly quickly that will identify these particular aircraft. And indeed, we should be able to confirm fairly quickly as to the identity of the jet, and perhaps even some last second broadcasts that may indicate what happened.
Mr. Jenkins, I'm going to interrupt for just one second because we're getting word that they are evacuating the White House down in Washington right now.
Well, this is not surprising. I mean, first of all, an action of this magnitude is something that does suggest a great deal of planning and preparation. In some of these recent actions, we have seen multiple coordinated operations.
But who's capable of this kind of planning and preparation?
There are a number of you know, terrorist organizations around the world that would be capable of this, based primarily in the Middle East. But it's too early, really, to speculate as to the identity. Certainly.
But is there any doubt in your mind that what we're looking at here is the aftermath of a coordinated terrorist incident?
You know, to explain. In any as happenstance.
Hold it, Mr. Jenkins. We're looking. There are two jets right now approaching the World Trade Center. Oh. We're watching. Hold on. I'm sorry. No, the one aircraft is cleared. We can't tell whether it was a plane or a chopper from our vantage point. I apologize, Mr. Jenkins.
No, that's okay.
We're more than a bit gun shy. We're seeing aircraft off to the right side of our picture. We're going to assume at this point that is a copter or is aircraft to get a better vantage point. But having seen one go plow in for a second time, we're a little bit wary. Go ahead. I apologize.
Of course, but the issue here is that the presumption has to be made that there could be yet further pieces to this operation that haven't yet unfolded. While this itself is certainly one of the most ambitious terrorist attacks that we have seen, certainly we have seen in the recent past coordinated attacks, even attacks taking place in different cities within minutes.
Let me ask you to sit there. James Kallstrom, you still with me?
Be with you for another minute or so, Brian.
Okay. The White House has been evacuated. Is that action that's normally taken as precautionary, an attack like this, or is that in direct response, you would think, to a specific threat?
Brian, I would say none of this is normal.
No, you know what I meant.
And I think probably just knowing the little bit that I know, sitting outside now and seeing what's happened here, I think that's probably very prudent.
I'm looking, Mr. Kallstrom and Mr. Jenkins, I'll tell you as we alert everyone else, that I'm looking at a report here from Reuters that a Palestinian group has claimed responsibility. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We're looking at a live picture from Washington, and there is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon. It would appear that there has been another major explosion, this one in the nation's capital. You are looking at a scene of apparent blast aftermath. There is smoke in the air over the Pentagon. We don't know whether this is the result of a bomb or whether it is yet another aircraft that has targeted a symbol of the United States power, but there is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon. This is coming at 9:43 Eastern Time. And we understand that there's a bomb at a heliport being reported. As I note all this, there is a report that I'm looking at from Reuters that a Palestinian group has claimed responsibility for the New York World Trade Center plane attacks. Abu Dhabi Television is reporting that it received a call from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, claiming responsibility for crashing 2 planes into the World Trade Center buildings. And Qatar-based Al Jazeera Television is saying that FBI sources are saying that one of the 2 aircraft had been hijacked. Mr. Jenkins, are you still with me? What's this Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine?
This is a Palestinian group whose history goes back into the late 60s. It's the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Certainly, they have not carried out anything on this scale. No terrorist group has carried out anything on this scale, but certainly haven't carried out anything like this, terrorist activity like this in many, many years. However, I'd be very, very cautious at this point about any telephone claims. Once these events occur, what we've seen is 2 things. Number one, in many cases, there is no credible claim of responsibility from the actual perpetrators. And second, there are often many false claims by groups once information like this goes out.
Let me just pass along some information. In New York, all airports, Newark, JFK, LaGuardia, all airports have been closed, as have all tunnels leading to New Jersey and Queens, and all bridges. All airports, tunnels, and bridges have been closed. Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Kallstrom, while you're there, let me just try to do a recap, if I might, because we're looking at just about 1 hour ago when all this began. It began when a plane, still an unidentified aircraft, plowed into one of the 2 towers of the World Trade Center, creating a hole, the larger of the 2 that you see on the left-hand side of your screen. 18 minutes after that, as we were dealing with that explosion, you see a second plane, appeared to be a commercial aircraft, bored into, there it is again, bored into the second of the 2 towers at a lower level. At this point, we do not have any confirmation of casualties or injuries, or even confirmation that these planes were hijacked. Nonetheless, we do have a couple of reports, one from AP, one from Reuters, reporting that an American Airlines plane was hijacked, that a United Airlines plane was hijacked, supposedly one of those 2 planes hijacked out of Boston. Within about 45 or 50 minutes after that first attack, we saw smoke pouring out of the Pentagon in the nation's capital. There's the scene right there. Again, at this point, we don't know if that's the result of a bombing, or we don't know if it's the result of a plane attack. The president right now is on his way back from Florida. He had gone there for an educational event. He came forward, had a couple of things to say to the nation. In a brief remarks, he said this was an apparent terrorist attack on our country, promised the full resources of the government to help those who were injured by the attack and to investigate the attack. He said, before leading people in prayer, that this will not stand. The president is heading back to the White House, but we can tell you at this point that the White House has been evacuated or is in the process of being evacuated. And here in New York, everybody is, of course, on full alert. All airports, tunnels, and bridges have been closed. Mr. Kallstrom, are you still with me?
Yeah, I
know you've got to get out of there. Any final comments from your end?
No, just a tragic day. I agree with the comments about, I don't think we should jump to any conclusions as to who did this. I think it's largely irrelevant for the public at this point. There are a lot of false claims and misclaims and no claims, and after all, this is such a massive attack that full retaliation will be in the cards. So the notion of someone standing up and saying they actually did this, I would have to put great doubt at that at this point.
Former New York FBI Director James Kallstrom. Jim, thank you.
Thank you.
We can add right now to the list of evacuated, we told you earlier the White House was in the process of or had been evacuated. We understand the same can now be said of the U.S. Capitol and the U.S. Treasury building. Brian Jenkins, are you with me?
Yes, I am.
You heard Mr. Kallstrom talking about responding to this kind of an attack, if that's what it was. That's something easily said. Is it doable?
Well, it is doable. The question is, first of all, it's far too early to talk about what it may be possible to do in response. I mean, clearly, an action like this will provoke some type of response, but then that really requires first figuring out who did it, and then figuring out what the appropriate response is.
Can you play process of elimination in answering who did it? Can you not eliminate some possibilities because they did not have the resources, the coordination, the expertise to do this?
You know, you have to be very, very careful both about jumping to conclusions as to who to blame and ruling out people prematurely. Many years ago, analysis of something like this used to be easier because we dealt with a number of identifiable terrorist organizations, each of which had its own identifiable capabilities and modus operandi. Today, it is a much more fluid organization from universes of like-minded fanatics. These various conspiracies are put together. And so, in fact, if we drop back to the plot that was discovered just before the Millennium celebrations in the United States, that involved some Algerians who, in turn, are believed to have been connected to Osama bin Laden. You know, one sees these assemblies of conspiracies that may involve many actors.
Again, a further note, and we're getting this as it comes in. We understand now we're getting a report that the FAA has halted all takeoffs, all traffic nationwide, that all aircraft are grounded. Obviously, there are those aircraft in the air. If they're bound for New York, they're going to arrive and find airports closed. But whether or not those in the air are going to be brought down to the nearest facility as soon as possible is still unclear. Is there a standard procedure amid all this, Mr. Jenkins? Mr. Jenkins, you still with me? Evidently, we've lost our line to Brian Jenkins. Let's just bring you up to speed on the picture you're seeing on your screen. On the left is the World Trade Center. We have smoke billowing out of both towers. It has been for over an hour now. We also have smoke coming out of a portion of the Pentagon on the right-hand side of your screen. That has been going on for about 10 or 15 minutes. It would seem that the United States on this day is under attack from terrorists, that the first aircraft was the first blow in that attack. It was an aircraft that an eyewitness has described to us as a 737. It struck the World Trade Center at its upper levels at 8:45 or within minutes of that this morning. And then 18 minutes after that, there was this frightening scene of a second aircraft plowing into the other tower on the southern tip of Manhattan. This on a clear day when visibility was perfect for flying. It would seem that both aircraft were directly targeting the World Trade Center, building that has, or a facility that was the scene of a terrorist attack back in 1993. That attack killed 6 and left over 1,000 injured. Although we have no reports of casualties or injuries at this point, it would seem that we can expect those numbers to be much, much worse today. Shortly after that attack, the president came forward in Florida with a brief address to the nation, promising the full resources and saying this will not stand. And then he is flying back to Washington. Once he gets there, he'll find the White House, the Capitol, and the Treasury have been evacuated, and he'll find the Pentagon is ablaze. Victimized again by yet another attack, this one in the nation's capital. That one came at about 9:30 Eastern time. Bill Plant is standing by with us at the White House or thereabouts. Bill, where are you and what are you getting?
Hello?
Bill? Bill? Bill Plant is standing by. Let's go ahead and see if we can't get our communication through with him. We are getting a report here. I'm looking. Paul Begala, Democratic consultant to Bill Clinton, is being quoted on the wire as saying he witnessed the explosion near the Pentagon shortly after two planes crashed in the World Trade Center. He says it was a huge fireball, a huge orange fireball, and he says another witness told him that a helicopter exploded. He is saying that another witness told him a helicopter exploded. Let's go to Bill Plant. Bill can't hear me, but I understand we can get his audio. So let's go ahead and signal Bill to tell us what he's got.
Bill Plant in Washington. I am across the street from the White House on the other side of Lafayette Park, approximately 1 block away. They have evacuated the entire White House staff and the staff of the old executive office building next door. We understand that the Treasury is also being evacuated. There's a lot of activity, fire trucks, ambulances, but as far as we know, there is no damage in the White House complex. I repeat, no damage that we know of in the White House complex. But this was in response to damage elsewhere, to the New York aircraft incidents and to whatever it was that happened at the Pentagon. But this is a full alert. The Secret Service has moved everybody away from the White House grounds, away from the White House complex. And they keep telling us that we have to remain a block away. There are fire trucks going by, ambulances going by, headed we know not where. But this is obviously a precautionary measure because no one clearly knows what to expect next. Brian?
All right, Bill Plant. And again, Bill is unable to hear us. We were able to get his audio in here, but as you can imagine, it is I'm sure a frantic scene down in the nation's capital this morning, as it is here in New York, as we've been watching down at the southern tip of Manhattan. Jane Clayson is with me here in New York, and I apologize for talking throughout, but you've been watching. Go ahead, Jane.
Well, I just wonder how many people are in the building right now. We haven't been able to assess if people have been coming out of the building, if there have been people on the ground. One man reportedly had some burns from some debris that had fallen from the building, but we still haven't been able to assess if there are injuries, or obviously there are many hundreds or if not thousands of people affected, says James Kallstrom, formerly of the FBI, but we still don't know that, and that's one looming question.
Yeah, I mean, you at this point, you hate to jump to conclusions and you don't want to throw numbers around, but if, and again, I put if in capital letters, if we are talking about two commercial aircraft plowing into the World Trade Center during business hours or shortly before the business day begins at 9 a.m., we are talking about some considerable numbers of dead and injured.
And not just at the World Trade Center, now at the Pentagon in Washington as well.
Also at the Pentagon. And we're looking at a list of some of the businesses on the upper levels of the World Trade Center, and none of them have any affiliation with the government. But again, the World Trade Center isn't necessarily a government building. It is, there's U.S. Customs above the 70th floor, but the World Trade Center, more than anything, is a symbol of the United States, a symbol of U.S. progress, a symbol of U.S. might, located as it is down at the heart of Wall Street. And so if in fact it was targeted, it was because of its symbolic value. Producer Laura Shane was by the Pentagon when it was hit. Let's go there again. She can't hear us, but she can speak with us. Laura, somebody cue her.
Hello. Hello.
All right. Obviously, we're having problems with Laura Shane's audio. Again, at this point, we don't know whether that Pentagon explosion was the result of an aircraft crashing into it or a bomb that was deployed near there. We had an unconfirmed report that it was a helicopter that had crashed into the building. You can still see some flames down there in in the lower right-hand corner. Now we are getting a report that they believe it was a plane, but again, we do not have any confirmation of that, nor do we have any idea what the numbers involved here are.
These are the first scenes from the ground, it appears.
Yeah, these are scenes from near the Pentagon. In the nation's capital. We don't know how close to the Pentagon these are. Obviously, that is not the Pentagon in the background, so we're talking of a neighboring area. We're not getting any numbers at this point. We do know that an FBI team has been dispatched from the nation's capital to investigate what has gone on at the World Trade Center, but at this point, our information is sketchy. Looking at a report here now, the first plane to hit the World Trade Center was a hijacked aircraft that had taken off from Boston, supposedly an American Airlines Boeing 767 out of Logan. This is the second aircraft. We don't know whether or not this aircraft was, as earlier reported, a United Airlines aircraft. We are also getting word out of Chicago that the Sears Tower, the tallest structure in that city, has been evacuated. Before we have to step aside, as we're getting another look at the second attack, we understand a Pentagon witness is with us in Washington. Good morning. This is Bryant Gumbel in New York. Could you identify yourself, please? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Could you identify yourself for me?
Yes, my name is Jim Dorsett.
And Jim, how close are you to the Pentagon? Okay, we're obviously having some problems making that connection with the eyewitness in Washington. We have just a minute left. Let's go ahead and recount what we do know. At 8:45 Eastern Time on a clear day on the southern tip of Manhattan, not one but two aircraft plowed into the World Trade Center. We don't know at this point if they were private aircraft. We don't know if it was intentional. All we do know is that they appeared to be commercial aircraft. These come amid reports of hijacking. Shortly after that, about an hour after that, there was an explosion at the Pentagon. At this point, the Pentagon, the White House, the Capitol, and the Treasury have been evacuated in Washington. In New York, all airports, tunnels, and bridges have been closed, and in Chicago, the Sears Tower has been evacuated. We understand now there has been a secondary explosion on Tower 2. With that, we will leave you and turn it over to Dan Rather.
This is CBS News continuing live coverage of the apparent terrorist attacks today here in New York City and in Washington, D.C. It's important to say these things at the very beginning. There is much that is not known about what is happening. The second thing is that the word from almost everybody who's trying to deal with the situation, the word of the day is steady. Steady. Yes, there have been some terrible things happening, but until and unless we know the facts, it's very difficult to draw many conclusions. Now, here's what we know. Just before 9 Eastern Time this morning, a plane crashed into one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center along the Hudson River here in New York. A few minutes later, a second plane crashed into the other tower. Both skyscrapers are on fire. Evacuations have been underway for a long while. There are known injuries. How many? Much too soon to know, and whether there's any death or not, it is too soon to know. Yes, there are widespread assumptions that there must be death, but there are no confirmed fatalities. Now, in Washington, the Pentagon has had a fire and explosions, much speculation of what would have caused the fires and explosions at the Pentagon in Washington, but very few facts. David Martin, our Pentagon correspondent, says that he has seen, I believe it said 5 injured people at the Pentagon. One eyewitness, and only one so far, is quoted as saying he thinks, I put that in quotation marks, he thinks a plane crashed into the Pentagon. But there'll be rumors all day, and we're going to try to separate the rumors from the facts. Now, you're looking at a live picture of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. In flames, with much smoke. In the last few minutes, there have been 2 reports, but not yet officially confirmed, that a portion of at least one of the towers has collapsed. but I caution that that's an unconfirmed report, although it comes from two sources, and it's unclear whether that collapse is about the interior of the building or some portion of the exterior of the building. I want to emphasize again, not to be redundant, but this is a day in which rumors are going to spread like mildew in damp basements. And there'll be reports, some of them will be officially confirmed, some not. That's the environment in which we're dealing. Now, President Bush was in Florida this morning. He called this an apparent act of terrorism and rushed back to Washington. The president is in the air going back to Washington at the moment. Now, in Washington, the reports spread that a plane also crashed at the Pentagon. See, as David Martin says, there are at least several injuries. Several is the word he used. The FAA has banned all aircraft takeoffs nationwide. Here in New York, the city is on a full terrorist alert. Bridges and tunnels are closed. You recall the World Trade Center was the target of a terrorist bombing in 1993. Now, again, it's important to point out that with television, what we can show you is what is at the end of the television camera. The whole city is not in smoke and flames, not by a long shot. The city is on a terrorist alert. Entry into the city has been closed off. Tunnels and bridges are closed off as a precautionary measure. But, you know, in many, many areas of New York City, life goes on this morning, and the same is true in Washington, D.C. So just keep in mind that when you see this picture constantly, it's of one section of New York City, and we go to Washington for the picture there, the Pentagon, the same thing. These pictures are not in real time. As you can see, that made it look like that the flames were spreading. This picture steadied now. For those of you familiar with the city, the World Trade Center at the end of Manhattan Island, two twin towers. Apparently, two aircraft, one hit into one of the towers and then another hit into the other tower. What kind of aircraft were they? We simply do not know what kind of planes they were. Witnesses described them as, quote, large aircraft. Yes, you may have heard reports, but the reports are unconfirmed, that there was one aircraft that had been hijacked. There continue to be reports. I'm pausing, taking in information as I speak to you. There are increasing reports that on one of the World Trade Center towers, that portions of the tower have collapsed. Now, this would not be surprising to have this proven to be true, given the smoke and flames that have been pouring out of these buildings for what now, well over an hour. I want to underscore again that both towers have been hit. Both towers, each tower was hit by an aircraft, incoming aircraft. The origin of the aircraft, what kind of planes, unknown. I was saying before, there have been these reports, but the reports are unconfirmed, that an aircraft in the Eastern Air Corridor may have been hijacked this morning and may have been one of the planes that crashed in the World Trade Center. None of that is confirmed. CBS News veteran correspondent Harold Dow is on the telephone now from a section of the city where these twin towers are in flames and smoke. Harold, if you hear us, come in.
I arrived on the scene about an hour and a half ago, and believe it or not, there was another major explosion. The building itself, literally the top of it, came down, sending smoke and debris everywhere. I had to do all I could to run to get away from all the debris. Me and a number of other people here are trapped in the subway here in a shoe store, actually trying to get away from most of the debris. It's just an incredible sight. They had a lot of emergency workers around the building, and of course everybody's hoping that these people were able to get out of there without being injured. But it is a surreal and devastating scene over here, something like I've never seen before.
Harold, exactly where are you in filing this report?
Dan, I'm at a subway station. I just ran down the stairs. I didn't even look at it. It's right around the corner from the World Trade Center, and I'm kind of waiting for that smoke and debris to blow away to go back upstairs. But it's just an unbelievable situation here.
Well, Harold, if I may, take a deep breath, take a series of deep breaths, and then let me ask you, have you seen any indication that would tend to confirm these reports, which have been growing in intensity, that a section of the World Trade Center has collapsed onto the street below? Do you see any confirmation of that in any direction?
That is true, Dan. That's what we were all running from. We heard the building coming down, and that's what we were running from. Literally, people ran out of their shoes trying to get out of the way of this thing.
Well, one can certainly understand that. So Harold Dow, our man on the scene, reports that he can confirm that a section, we do not know how large a section of one of the World Trade Center towers has collapsed into the street below. Now, for those of you who are joining us in progress, it's Dan Rather at CBS News World Headquarters in New York with Russ Mitchell at my side here, covering a breaking news situation. 2 airplanes, one just before 9 o'clock Eastern Time, the other shortly later. One each crashed into one each of the World Trade Center buildings here in New York. Something, we know not exactly what has happened at the Pentagon in Washington. There are unconfirmed reports that a plane crashed into the Pentagon and started a large fire there. There have been some people injured at the Pentagon. How many, we do not know. David Martin on the scene at the Pentagon says he saw several people injured. There are other, and I repeat, totally unconfirmed reports at Pentagon that it wasn't a plane that went into the Pentagon, it was a helicopter, and then there are yet third versions of this that say a plane and a helicopter may have crashed into the Pentagon. But all of that is in the area of unconfirmed fact. Something started to fire with some explosion at the Pentagon not long after the 2 World Trade Centers were hit by separate aircraft. Mika Brzezinski is downtown. Mika?
Yep. Hi, Mika Brzezinski here reporting from PS 89. It's near the scene of the now collapse of what we believe to be the Tower number 1 of the World Trade Center. I was standing with CBS News correspondent Byron Pitts. We were coordinating our crews in a crowd of people near the corner of Murray Avenue and the West Side Highway when the collapse occurred, and literally plumes of smoke and gases as the collapse happened, I'm sure you're seeing in the video, began to roll our way, and that is when the crowd went wild. People just began to run. Our live trucks shut down. Crews were running. Reporters were running. People were running. And the cops literally were just waving their arms saying, go, go, go. We are inside the school right now, actually inside a small room, trying to stay clear of the crowds that are trying to get out of the way, and also the evacuation of this school. School officials here are trying to get everybody out of the building in an orderly fashion as quickly as possible. But again, there is so much confusion out on the street. It is literally chaos out there. We've got a short timeline here. The school right now is now putting on the intercom where kids need to go to assemble classes near Chambers Street. They're trying to organize the classes and get these kids out of here as safely as possible. Right now we're dealing with the air because of the plumes of smoke and gases. Byron pointed out to me we needed to move quickly because the smoke that was rolling our way and the debris as well was very thick, and it could be very dangerous. It was already a chaotic situation before the collapse happened, and this is just piling more danger and damage on top of what was already a very chaotic situation. We're dealing with a wide range of emotions out here on the street as well. You've got typical New Yorkers. I actually ran with my producer, Mike Noble, about a mile to get here before we hopped onto a golf cart and got someone to bring us right up to the scene. And what we saw were people who were walking nonchalantly. It's New York, kind of looking back at what they could see, and others completely upset, crying. One woman had to get off her bike because she was so upset. I think a lot of people in a situation like this, even if they're not close to it, all of a sudden feel that fear. They feel that maybe this was deliberate. What is happening in our city? But in a sense, right now, we are dealing with a situation where 2 planes hit the World Trade Towers, one after the other. We're not necessarily sure how and why it happened. You've got some witnesses saying that they saw one of the planes, I believe the DC-3, or maybe it was the smaller plane. I think it was the smaller plane that appeared to be flying directly toward the tower, but no one can be sure right now. What we've got is hundreds of ambulances, hundreds of fire crews. I mean, I could not count the fire trucks and the crews that passed us as I was running to the scene, blaring their sirens, trying to get there as quickly as possible, trying to get to those injured and to the casualties. At this point, nobody knows how many casualties, but it appears there will be some. Back to you.
Mika Brzezinski reporting from the area of Manhattan where you see these smoke and flames. The 2 twin World Trade Centers hit this morning separately by aircraft. Now, let me underscore that New York is not burning. One section of New York has had a terrible thing happen, what President Bush has called an apparent terrorist attack. And in Washington, D.C., an apparent terrorist attack I underscore the word apparent terrorist attack on the Pentagon. CBS News veteran Defense Department correspondent David Martin is on the telephone from the area. David, do you hear us?
The White House.
Well, we're having some difficulty bringing in David Martin. These pictures from outside the Pentagon are of people who were injured in the explosion and fire. There, we're trying to bring in David Martin, who is on the grounds of the Pentagon. As you might well understand, cell phone traffic has been extremely busy this morning, so busy that it makes it difficult to get any cell phone communication in Manhattan, New York, and for that matter in Washington itself. So while we try to get David Martin up, you're looking at a live picture from the Pentagon in Washington. Keep in mind, 2 airplanes hit one each of the Twin Towers World Trade Centers in New York, and in the Pentagon, nobody knows what started it. Nobody knows for sure what started it. Apparently, a plane and or a helicopter was flown into the Pentagon, but that's not been confirmed. There was an explosion and fire in the Pentagon. These pictures have to do with casualties injured at the Pentagon. If anybody has been killed, we are not yet aware of it. We go to Jim Stewart in our Washington Bureau. Jim?
And here in Washington, the police now have closed down the Capitol, the House and Senate. They have closed down the Justice Department. The World Bank has been emptied. We are told that the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington now is on full alert with the anticipation that there could be additional targets if, in fact, someone is targeting sites in the nation's capital. We are told that the FAA has grounded all flights, all domestic flights in the United States. One building that has not closed down is the FBI. The FBI has established an emergency command post in the center of its building. It's a contained area that is presumably safe from bombs, they believe, and FBI officials have been there now for the last 2 hours trying to sort out exactly what is going on. I can tell you, Dan, that the working theory here is that this is the work of terrorists. They specifically believe this is the work of Osama bin Laden. This is pure speculation at the moment. As recently as yesterday, Dan, when we were making our rounds on what the latest terrorist threats were in the United States and abroad, there was no hint whatsoever that there was a threat against any domestic target in the United States. There had not been any domestic intercepts of messages. There had been no sense that there were people here who should not be here. The feeling was that there were threats against targets overseas, but not here in the United States. They tell me, frankly, that there is a roadmap, a blueprint, if you will, for precisely what happened today. And that was signed by Ramzi Youssef. This is the bomber who was involved in the World Trade Center originally and who had plans to hijack aircraft and target buildings in the United States, specifically the CIA. Mr. Youssef, of course, was captured by the FBI. He's incarcerated here in the United States. But this is precisely the game plan that was talked out some 7 to 8 years ago by terrorists associated with Osama bin Laden. One note of concern here at the FBI already is that their field office, Dan, in New York is located at 26th and Federal. That is very, very close to the World Trade Center. Judging from the pictures here, my guess is that they have probably been incapacitated themselves and they'll have to move elsewhere in the short term. Dan?
Jim Stewart in our Washington Bureau. The top half of one World Trade Center building has collapsed and portions of the building have fallen onto the street below. Now, Mika Brzezinski is in that part of Manhattan where the World Trade Centers are located. We pick up her eyewitness reports now. Mika?
Dan, with the collapse now that we witnessed here firsthand, you get a sense there of not only the chaos that is here on the streets of what happened with the 2 planes that hit the World Trade Towers, but also the depth of the disaster and the loss here of life. I'm sitting here huddled in a small room in PS 89 right near the scene where this school actually has been evacuated right now, and we're huddled by the phone trying to get information to you. And Byron Pitts and I were standing right in plain view of the collapse, and Byron counted 7 people jumping from the building. So you get a sense now of not just the disaster, the visual disaster that you're dealing with and the possibility of casualties, but you get a sense of a massive, at this point, loss of life. There was also mass chaos on the street when this happened. There were crowds of people being held back by police about 2 blocks from the scene, and what we had was just a rampage of people trying to get away, because after that collapse, you can see from the video the plumes, the billowing, the rolling smoke and gases and debris literally flying in the air after the reverberations of the collapse. People just started to run. There were those who were there just to look at it, just to watch what was happening. Some even, into it for the excitement value. And their emotions turned from excitement to complete fear and horror that they too might be hurt in this. And of course, there's the fears for the people who were inside the building, the people who Byron saw jump, but also who was underneath there, who might have been closer to the scene. Because I'm telling you, you hear me? Can you all hear me? We're being evacuated here from the building, and I'll just tell you real quickly, when that collapse happened, if it had been on our side of the building, we would have been covered with that debris. That collapse spread far and wide, and the crowds that were nearby to look at this, I don't think we're far enough from the scene. Now, I'm inside a school, which is 3-4 blocks from where this whole disaster happened, and they were methodically trying to get the kids out of here and get them out of here fast. They saw the rolling smoke and the debris coming toward the school, and it was not just a matter of being, a couple of yards away from it. It was get the kids out of here to a different place and quickly. Get your classes together and get them out of here and meet somewhere else. And they had the intercom system going wild here. Cops were running through the halls, and Byron and I were able to get into a small office here where we could get to a phone. But right now we are in an area that is completely evacuated, and we're talking to the NYPD right now about what to do and where to be at this point. I don't know if they're going to let us stay on this phone, but I will tell you, and I'm sure, Dan, as you've been reporting, 50,000 people work at the World Trade Center complex, and at this point there is a severe fear of loss of life at this point and massive casualties. You've got traffic at a complete standstill, and obviously flights in the area have been suspended. We've got a cop here on the scene. Were you actually here? Were you here when this happened, officer?
Yes, I just
Can you
that it was set on fire.
Tell me exactly where you were and what you saw. Can you do that? Okay, the cop right now is working on other things. Sorry about that. We're just trying to get a sense of what happened. I'm sure you've heard a lot of different accounts from different views of this. You've got 2 towers on fire, and now the one that has literally lost a part of the top of the building. And Byron and I were trying to figure out, was it the top quarter of the building, the top 8? It was a massive section of the building, so massive that people who were inside the building still alive were jumping. And at this point, what we are dealing with, I'm just looking out a closed door here at the chaos out in the hall here. People are still trying to figure out where to go. They're asking the cops how to get out of here, where's the safest place to go. And what we're trying to do right now is keep a handle on the chaos here, keep a handle on where people are, and we're going to stay on the story. Right now, Dan, I'll throw it back to you.
Mika Brzezinski covering at the scene of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. If you're asking how many people injured, how many people killed, the answer is we do not know. One portion of one of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center here in New York has collapsed. Now, American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767, flying from Boston to Los Angeles, is reported by the Associated Press to have reported a terrorist takeover in flight. We have not confirmed that on our own. This is according to the Associated Press. Assumptions can be made all over the place, but the fact is we don't know what airplanes hit the World Trade Centers. We do know that there were 2 separate airplanes not far apart. It's believed that an aircraft of some kind also caused the explosion fire at the Pentagon. Now, there are reports out of Washington at this hour. Keep in mind that the FAA has ordered what in effect is a lockdown on air flights over the United States. Planes in the air have been ordered to land. They don't want any aircraft flying anywhere in the United States if they can keep from it at this moment. And here's the reason. Reports of all kinds are flying around, but there is one report that another aircraft has been hijacked in the Eastern Corridor. U.S. Air Force fighter aircraft are flying over the White House at this hour. Evacuations of some portions, at least some portions of the White House and the Capitol have been reported over the last hour and a half. But this is a fluid situation, this breaking story situation. And to bring you up to date, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center have been hit each by one aircraft, one slightly before 9 o'clock, one just after 9 o'clock Eastern time this morning. And a short time after that, this picture you see on the right of your screen emerged from the Pentagon. What happened at the Pentagon, unclear, but there are eyewitness reports that an aircraft crashed into the Pentagon. Obviously, authorities are taking every precaution that they can, and amid this report, the unconfirmed report that another civilian airliner possibly has been hijacked somewhere in the Washington area is leading to yet another series of investigations. The Associated Press now, in a flash, quoting the Associated Press, one World Trade Center tower has collapsed. Period. And let's pause for a moment, because given the photographs, the live pictures we have, it's very difficult to confirm that report that a whole tower has collapsed. We're going to stick with the moment, for the moment, with the report that a portion of one of the World Trade Center towers has collapsed. Perhaps that's what the Associated Press means. With me here is Russ Mitchell in New York. Russ, seeing these pictures of the World Trade Center, both towers aflame, all that smoke down in that part of Manhattan, is reminiscent of what happened in the World Trade Center not quite 10 years ago.
That's right. It was February 26, 1993. 6 people were killed in a terrorist bombing, over 1,000 people injured. And for folks who are really not familiar with the World Trade Center, let's kind of put things in perspective for you. These are twin towers. They were dedicated back in 1973. They are each more than 1,300 feet tall, 110 stories. As Mika Brzezinski reported a few minutes ago, 50,000 people work in these twin towers, and we're talking about things from brokerage firms to law firms and other offices on those floors. To give you an idea of the amount of folks and the size we're talking about here, each tower of the World Trade Center has its own zip code. Each tower has its own zip code. It is a symbol of American capitalism. And when this happened, I know back in 1993, Dan, the thought was that the World Trade Center, along with other major buildings in the United States, in New York, were targets for this because they were symbols of America. And anyone who was out to prove something would hit these targets. And just like the World Trade Center, by the way, were the tallest buildings in the world before they were displaced by the Sears Tower in Chicago, which has also been evacuated this morning.
In that last attack on the World Trade Center, the terrorist attack for which the attackers were tracked down and convicted and imprisoned, at least some of them, the plan at that time by the terrorist planners was a series of attacks. They intended to attack not only the World Trade Center, but also the United Nations and at least one of the tunnels leading into New York City. Now, what's happened this morning on the prima facie case so far is that this was a coordinated series of attacks which succeeded with the World Trade Centers and with the Pentagon. Now, from the scene, you heard Mika Brzezinski earlier report that she saw people literally running out of their shoes, or I think it was Harold Dow who reported that. Let me pause and say that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department in Washington. So in Washington, something has hit the Pentagon. Witnesses say they believe an aircraft crashed into the Pentagon, a portion of the Pentagon, and there have been injuries there. Now a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department in Washington. No further details available on that. Most international air flights scheduled to come in the United States are being diverted to Canada. The FAA has asked that no aircraft be in the air anywhere in the United States if possible, what amounts to an air travel lockdown in the United States, as the country is obviously under a concerted attack of some kind. Certainly not the whole country, but selected targets, the World Trade Center, Twin Towers, the Pentagon, now a car bomb outside the State Department. It's what's being called a well-orchestrated orgy of terrorism. It's filled the skies here in Manhattan with black smoke and flames, and a portion, at least a portion of one of the World Trade Center buildings has collapsed. I repeat for emphasis that the Associated Press, very reliable, perhaps the world's most reliable wire service, says that, quote, a tower has collapsed. However, we don't confirm that, and what our eyes tell us is that a portion of one of the towers has collapsed, but perhaps not the tower itself. But at any rate, black smoke, flames, a lot of rumors, certainly some death and destruction, but how much is unclear. There have been injuries at the Pentagon, certainly injuries at the World Trade Center. It's difficult to believe that there are not some deaths connected with the World Trade Center, that some people were seen jumping from windows in the World Trade Center. We go now to Washington. CBS News correspondent Cheryl Atkinson. Cheryl?
What I saw regarding the Pentagon this morning around 9:45, headed on the George Washington Parkway, which, as you know, borders the Potomac River on the Virginia side, listening to CBS radio as to what was happening in New York. And I immediately thought about the Washington Monument and the White House, of course, which are always considered possible terrorist targets. And before me, in the direction of the Pentagon, came up a huge, huge white and black plume of smoke that within just a couple of minutes filled the entire sky in that direction. I tried to use the cell phone to call the office to report what I was seeing, but cell phone usage was apparently maxed out and it was impossible to get through. People were pulling off to the side of the road. Some of them appeared to be nervous to be crossing the bridges over into Washington, D.C., which is what a lot of that traffic along the Parkway is doing that time of morning. I didn't see a plane. It must have obviously, if there was one, been flying very, very low before it hit the Pentagon. Didn't hear the noise, even though really I was probably within about a mile of the building. And again, it was just an enormous amount of smoke over at the Pentagon in that direction, filling the sky within a matter of minutes.
Cheryl Atkinson in Washington. We now go to David Martin by telephone. David Martin, our Pentagon correspondent, is on the grounds of the Pentagon, is my understanding. David?
Dan, I've been standing about 50 yards away from the west side of the Pentagon, which is where this explosion occurred. Portions of that part of the building have now collapsed. There are perhaps a dozen fire trucks on the scene trying to fight the fire, and they are rigging the grounds around the Pentagon for handling mass casualties. I have only so far seen about perhaps 10 or 12 people who were injured, some of them seriously enough to require...
We're going to interrupt you, David Martin, and come back here to New York because the second tower in the World Trade Center is teetering and looks like it may be in the process of collapsing. The second World Trade Center tower just had another explosion, sort of, we can't call it a secondary explosion, and appears to be in the process of collapsing. We pause to let you absorb this picture. The Statue of Liberty looking past Our Lady of Liberty to the World Trade Center itself. Watch this videotape of the World Trade Center tower.
My goodness.
The World Trade Center tower in New York collapsing. A catastrophe on the tip of Manhattan. There are no words that can describe this. It's a time to watch, absorb, and think. As we re-rack that videotape to show you the scene again and give you the horrifying pictures from the tip of Manhattan. This is videotape from just a few moments ago. And what we had hoped and prayed would not happen, could not happen, has happened. New York's World Trade Center, in effect, has been destroyed. The loss of life will be high. There's an eyewitness who saw this happen. Sir, if you were there, please come in and identify yourself to us, please. Sir, it's Dan Rather. If you can identify yourself and tell us what you saw, please.
My name is Ron Oxenstein. The building I work in faces World Trade. At about 8:30, I heard an explosion, ran to the building, saw fire and smoke and everything coming out. And then all of a sudden, saw two bodies flying out of the windows. A couple of minutes later, about 20 minutes later, I was watching out, and the second explosion was like a fireball came out. And at that point, we just evacuated the building, ran down. And as we were running, just now you see it's like the second tower collapsed. It's just incredible. Couldn't believe this.
Mika Brzezinski is also downtown, where both towers of the World Trade Center have collapsed. We're now confirming. We mentioned to you earlier, the Associated Press had said that one of the World Trade Center's towers had collapsed, and now the other has collapsed.
Dan, can you hear me? It's Mika.
Yes, Mika.
Dan, I'm sitting here inside PS 89, huddled with about 50 or maybe 100 firefighters, literally covered with soot and debris. I'm also with CBS News correspondent Byron Pitts, who you'll hear from in a moment. We are dealing right now with the aftermath of this second collapse. We were right here, Byron and I, in the thick of things when it happened. It went down. You could hear it, and then you could see people running. I actually was outside the building, the school that's been evacuated. They're actually evacuating the next school as well, Stuyvesant, trying to get people out of the line of fire at this point. I was outside the building where people were wheeling injured victims of this disaster on carts, on paper carts, on box carts, trying to get people away from the scene. And then all of a sudden, Byron and I were looking at each other, and we heard this low rumble. And then you just saw masses of people running, and all the firefighters came inside this building, and they are literally covered, many of them coughing, covered with soot, trying to figure out where to go. One of them said this is like a state of war. We're talking with two of these guys right here. And in fact, let me pass the phone over to CBS News correspondent Byron Pitts. He's got more. Byron.
Byron Pitts from CBS News. Officer, your uniform is covered in soot. Can you tell me something just for a second?
Don't have time. Don't have time.
Now, the tower's collapsed.
All guys, yes, the tower's down, but there's people trapped. We got to go back.
What's the assignment right now for you? What are you trying to do at this moment?
We're trying to get back in there and make sure all the cops, the firemen, and the civilians are out of there.
You said you'd been here before.
Well, we were here when the first part, the other side of the building came down.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. Just dirty, that's all. I'm fine.
Yes, sir. Is there any concern about people on the street at this point?
We're moving everybody back. We want, if the TV stations are on, tell them to tell everybody to stay away from this location. At least probably 10 blocks north of this building in a whole radius.
Is there any expectation you'll evacuate?
What the condition of the other tower is, though.
Yes, sir. So any concern for people on the street at this moment?
There are numerous people trapped from what we understand. We have no idea how many. It could be hundreds, could be thousands.
Trapped in the building or trapped on the street?
In the debris, both.
Officer Johnson, thank you so much. I'll let you get back to work. Dan, right now we're at PS 89. We're standing in the hallway. The building is filled up with, beginning to fill up with smoke and soot. There are about, a dozen firefighters in the building at this point. We believe regrouping to go out again. Excuse me, sir. Byron Pitts from CBS News. You're a firefighter. What can you tell me, sir? We're on the air right now. Nothing. You got to see a guy in the White House. Okay, yes, sir. We have a firefighter. Yes, sir. Can you tell us anything at this point?
No comment.
Okay. All right. Dan, that's the situation here at PS 89. The firefighters, I guess, are using this location as a temporary place to catch their breath. The air is a little fresher here than it is outside. I'll give it back to my colleague, Mika, for a moment.
And Dan, it's Mika Brzezinski here. I don't know if you can still hear me. The air is getting really difficult to breathe. Okay, Dan, I'm gonna send it back to you. I'm just taking a look outside, though, and the cars are all covered with debris. We are definitely still in the line of fire.
Mika Brzezinski and Byron Pitts on the lower end of Manhattan. This live photograph, the twin towers of the World Trade Center have collapsed. Planes smashed into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon this morning in what is widely reported to be a well-orchestrated orgy of terrorism. It's filled the skies of lower Manhattan and much of the whole island of Manhattan, and Washington, D.C., with black smoke. The streets of both cities have had some chaos. The number of injured and dead is unknown. At the moment, the core, the heart of the story, is the collapse of the World Trade Centers. How many people have been injured and killed? Unknown. But we have to face the fact, because it is a fact, that an attack on the World Trade Centers has been devastatingly effective, collapsing both of the Twin Towers. This will go down as a kind of Pearl Harbor of terrorism in Manhattan, New York today. To say nothing of Washington, where the Pentagon has had explosion and flames. Witnesses said that aircraft of some kind went into the Pentagon. That has not been confirmed. A car bomb exploded outside the outside the State Department in Washington. Government shutdown in Washington, D.C. All employees have been advised to go home. I want to double check whether that's Washington, D.C. and or New York. Washington and New York. All non-essential New York City employees have been asked to return home. Secretary of State Colin Powell is returning to the United States from a trip from Peru. President Bush was in Florida this morning visiting some school children. He's on his way back to Washington, D.C. All New York City airports are closed. All entry into the city by tunnel and bridge have been closed. We're not absolutely certain of the George Washington Bridge, but I believe all bridges and tunnels, at least for a while this morning, into the city of New York were closed. And this is the reason. This picture you're looking at here, those of you familiar with New York, this is the great harbor of New York City, with the Statue of Liberty just down in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, roughly. There you can see the Statue of Liberty off to the left. This is smoke on the water of the Hudson River, New York City harbor, and we will show you on videotape again the collapse of the second of the World Trade Center buildings. One had collapsed earlier, and then there was this collapse. 110 stories down to the ground. There's been a fourth explosion at the World Trade Center. Just reported. Claire McIntyre was an eyewitness to this collapse of the World Trade Center. Ms. McIntyre?
Yes. Hi.
What did you see?
Well,
what did you feel? What did you hear?
I'm on the 91st floor of Building 1, and I faced the north side, and I was at my computer, and I heard the plane, and then I saw it hit right above us, the 92nd or 93rd floor probably, or even 94. And our whole floor just fell to pieces practically, and we got out, though. Everybody in my company got out. And we walked down the stairs, and when we got down to the bottom, it was like a war area. It was just, there were bodies on the ground in pieces, I'm sorry to say. And when we came out, we were walking up the block to get away from the building, and that's when 2 World Trade Center blew up, and we were just in a cloud of darkness, and we had to feel our way to some clearness, and we've been pretty much walking ever since, trying to get north.
Ms. McIntyre, if you can stay with it for just one moment, I want to interrupt and say, Dateline Pittsburgh, large plane crashes are reported in western Pennsylvania. The source of this are officials at Somerset County Airport. No further details are available. We've had these large plane crashes reported now in western Pennsylvania, car bomb going on outside the State Department in Washington. No further details on that. Fire and explosion at the Pentagon. Eyewitnesses say an aircraft of some kind possibly went into the Pentagon. And then here in New York, the collapse of these 2 World Trade Center buildings. Ms. McIntyre, eyewitness to what's been happening down there. You said you saw one of the planes as it came into the building.
I did. I actually saw it after it was already partially into the building. I saw the wings and the tail.
Was it a large aircraft?
It looked fairly large. I didn't think it looked as large as I'm hearing it probably was. I thought it was a small jet. It sounds like maybe it was larger than I thought.
Well, but you are the eyewitness. I recognize what a horrific scene that the part of the aircraft was already inside the building when you first saw it.
That's correct.
And did it look to you to be a large airliner?
It looked like a small airliner to me.
Would you say 2 engines or 4, or would you be able to say?
I wouldn't, because that part of the plane was already in the building when I saw it.
Ms. McIntyre, you said that, unfortunately, that you saw people who were killed.
Yes.
Where were those people, and about how many?
I saw definitely two bodies in the plaza down below when we got out of the stairwell. And they were walking us through the plaza, I think trying to make us go very quickly so we didn't see anything. But I definitely saw 2 bodies that were just torn to shreds.
Did you hear the airplane as it approached?
Yeah, I certainly did.
Describe that sound for me.
Oh, it was horrible. It was the sound of a jet plane coming right at you.
But you didn't see it until it had, in fact, already hit the building.
That's correct.
What did you think during those moments?
I thought, I didn't know what to think, to tell you the truth. I guess I started to panic a little, but then calmed down, and everybody in my company, we have only about 22 people there, but we all kind of ran out, and one man was under a whole pile of debris, and but he was okay. He got out, and then we just started walking down the stairs. It was initially it was panic, but then we calmed down.
Did you actually see either of the World Center towers collapse?
We saw the second one. It seemed like we didn't really see it. We heard it, and then looked back and did see everything just flying at us. It was just horrible.
Thank you so much for your eyewitness testimony, and God bless.
Thanks.
CBS News correspondent Byron Pitts is in the area where the World Trade Center's Twin Towers have collapsed. You're looking at videotape of one of them collapsing. We go live to Byron Pitts. Byron.
Dan, I'm at PS 89, an elementary school in the area. We're 3 blocks from the tower. Joining me now is firefighter Tom McGee. Sir, what can you tell me?
We were in the Marriott Hotel when the first explosion or the first collapse happened. Took out the lobby of the hotel. We were able to crawl out after about a half hour, crawling up the block. The second building came down, I guess. I don't know. But it went from day to night. It was the most god-awful thing I've ever seen.
You said earlier...
People falling out the building left and right. They were jumping in the early stages of the fire.
Yes, sir. Firefighter McGee, I heard you say earlier that you lost everybody. What were you talking about?
I can't find any of my men. They won't come up on the radio or the cell phone. So I don't know.
Where did you last see them, sir?
They were in front of One World Trade Center, in front of the Marriott, and about a block up from that. And it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
How were you?
I gotta talk to my wife.
Yes, sir. Oh, you were saying again. Please go ahead. A message for your wife.
Maria, I just want to let the last word you heard on the phone was, "Oh my God, that was the second collapse." I just want to let you know I made it out.
A message from a firefighter to his wife. Dan, back to you.
Byron Pitts on the tip of Manhattan, where a firefighter just said, "It's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life." And for many Americans looking at this scene, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center collapsed by apparent terrorist act. They can say, this is the worst thing we've seen in our lives. In Washington, a city on edge as well, where the Pentagon has been struck in some way, explosion and fire, we go to David Martin on cell phone. David?
I'm at Arlington National Cemetery, which is just across the highway from the Pentagon. A portion of the west side of the Pentagon has collapsed. I spoke to one of many injured who were in the building at the time. He had a light head wound. I asked him what happened. He said he didn't know, but as he was leaving the building, he asked a security guard, "What hit us?" And the security guard said, "A plane." And you can see pieces of lying about 50 yards away from the building of the Pentagon. Right now, this scene is one of black smoke and dozens of fire engines, medevac helicopters. They are rigging that part of the lawn of the Pentagon, which is where the helipad that the Secretary of Defense uses is located. They are rigging that to handle mass casualties. They're bringing in large numbers of stretchers to deal with this. All appearances are that for the first time in its 50-plus year history, the Pentagon has been attacked.